I'm Sienna. I'm the kid.
I'm Sarah. I'm the mom.
This is Queer Kid Straight Mom.
Let's talk. Welcome back to Queer Kids Straight Mom. This episode is a little bit of a follow-up on our last episode, where Sienna and Brian talked about the backslide in support for LGBTQ plus people. We specifically picked on Andrew Sullivan, but there seem to be plenty of people who believe that support for things like gay marriage have declined because of liberals advocating for trans rights. I have a take on this. There may be some truth to that, but I think it's the result of a very calculated strategy by Republicans. As much as I hate to give today's Republican leaders credit for anything, I have to admit that this has been a very savvy strategy. I think there was a point where the far right realized they were losing. We had a Black president, legalized gay marriage, a woman ran for president and won the popular vote. They started to see it all slipping away. But one piece of basic psychology that Republicans have always been really good at understanding is that people will always react to feeling threatened. Research has shown that people are more likely to accept restrictions on civil liberties if they feel they are in danger. They also understand that humans have a hardwired instinct to feel threatened by anyone who might take something they consider theirs. Resource hoarding was once essential to survival. In a not everyone survives situation, even decent people will turn on each other to save themselves. So this instinct remains, even though many fewer of our current situations are about survival. Republicans know this. They know they can activate voters by inventing a threat. Meanwhile, I think there's this block of Republican voters who don't really care that much about some of these social issues like gay marriage that Republicans need to hold on to. I'm thinking about this college friend I had who I got in an argument with about Bill Clinton. I was in favor of him being impeached because he lied under oath. Whether I cared what he was lying about was kind of secondary to my belief that the president needs to follow the laws that the people are required to follow. My friend didn't think he should be impeached because she thought that what he did wasn't that big of a deal. That friend is now a Trump voter, and I guess if I consider it from this perspective, it makes sense. She didn't think Clinton's sexual misconduct or his lying under oath were a big deal. So it kind of makes sense that Trump's behavior and constant lies aren't deal breakers for her. Dad also has this coworker who's a Trump voter who was completely shocked that we have family members that are skipping Sienna's wedding because they oppose gay marriage. He has zero interest in controlling other people's sexual behavior. But like I said, he's a Trump voter. So besides seeing people as nosy and prudish for fixating on sexual behaviors, what do these two people have in common? They are both people who feel like they follow the rules and fork over taxes and have to make ends meet. They resent other people getting ahead based on what they see as unfair advantages. So how does the Republican Party keep these two? They conjure up a threat. Lo and behold, immigrants are arriving in droves and taking your jobs. They're sucking resources from a system that they give nothing back to. They skip the steps you took and butt in line. They're criminals and will bring violence to your neighborhoods.
They're eating your cats and dogs.
Exactly. They're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs. Clearly, this has been a really effective strategy where immigration is concerned. And you know where else it's been really effective? Trans rights. It only makes sense that the same people who would be angry about immigrants getting things they didn't earn would also be angry about trans women cheating at sports and sneaking into women's restrooms. Voila, another threat. Point being, if there's a backlash to everyone talking about trans rights, I think everyone should take a breath and recognize that trans people have been around forever. Trans women have been using public bathrooms for decades. Liberals aren't the ones who made this an issue. There was a very calculated strategy by Republicans to regain control of voters they knew they were losing. Do you feel like you see that too? This whole thing was my personal theory. So I'm interested in your perspective.
No, I think it makes sense. And I think that there's an element, we think back to that Andrew Sullivan piece, there's this argument that actually people will make about gay people as well, that, It's not that I don't think that they should have equal rights, like they should be protected from discrimination. I just think they shouldn't be allowed to get an unfair advantage, and they'll use that as a cover. But ultimately, the things that they're claiming as what they think are taking trans rights too far are things that are logical continuations of equal rights, right? So if you say, well, I don't think trans women should be discriminated against, I just don't think that they should be allowed in women's spaces. You're effectively saying that you think that they shouldn't be allowed to be discriminated against, except in the cases where you personally think that discrimination is justified, even if it's not backed up by any facts or statistics or research.
Yeah, I think that, first of all, yeah, there's a lot of, well, that's not what I think, so that doesn't count as discrimination. And that, yeah, it's really interesting trying to take apart this whole thing where people have these like really sort of self-serving ways of defining discrimination,
Mm-hmm.
right? You not being allowed to have the same legal rights as any other married couple is discrimination. Is discrimination based on sex. But there are also people who say that having to recognize your marriage, like that like wacko woman that wouldn't give marriage licenses to gay couples, like because they think that having to recognize that as an actual marriage is like religious discrimination, which is like this really weird. I don't know, there's this weird thing going on where it's almost like this childish, like, I'm not discriminating against you, you're discriminating against me.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that people really would move past some of these things. A lot of these things aren't a big deal to people until you go out of your way to point out ways that usually aren't even that accurate to convince you that they are going to negatively affect your life.
Right. Think about what a complete and total non issue trans women in bathrooms or trans women in sports was until 2018, I want to say, is when North Carolina passed the first bathroom bill. Like, no one cared, or at least the people who cared were just like the absolute horrible bigots who like showed up and protested at a gay soldier's funeral, right? And conveniently, Republicans didn't do well in the midterms. And they were worried about their political prospects because, Trump was acting like an absolute maniac in office. And they decided to, yeah, manufacture this threat. And you can see the way that it is spread across the United States with really no regard for, again, is there a need for this legislation? Is there an epidemic of trans women assaulting cis women in bathrooms? No. Has every major sporting event been won by a transgender woman? No. Like, complete and total non issues that, yeah, have just been made into things that Republicans can stir people up over and try to use to fearmonger and get themselves back into power.
Mm-hmm. Do you know? I should have looked this up. I don't actually know. I don't know if you do either, but the North Carolina bathroom bill, that first one, do you know, was there like a specific complaint that a person made? Was there a lawsuit? Do you know what instigated somebody choosing that as like, this is the issue we're going to use?
So the internet is telling me, like a few different sources are saying that the city of Charlotte passed an ordinance saying that trans people had the right to use the bathroom that aligned with their gender identity. And that apparently made Republicans so angry that they had to pass a ban on trans people using the bathroom that aligned with their gender identity. So, no, as far as I can tell, there was not like a sex assault case or anything like that.
So it was, I guess, like I was saying, there was a string of progress, right? Social progress over a couple of decades.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, I guess, maybe the step that they were like, ooh, we can use this one.
Mm-hmm.
Which I guess if Andrew Sullivan wants to argue that that was the left provoking the issue, you could make that argument.
No. Enforcing equal rights, such a provocation.
I'm assuming, and this would like involve more research probably, but like I'm assuming there must have been a reason for passing that ordinance.
Presumably.
So this is just like speculation. So we're not going to like rant and rave about it being true and be like, guess what happened? like some podcasters do. But I'm just like speculating, like, so maybe somebody was being discriminated against. And that's why they passed the ordinance.
Right, that certainly seems like a reasonable conclusion, or right, that some business was like, "We're not going to let men in our women's bathroom," or even just that, some trans people got together and said, "Hey, let's try to organize support for this because we haven't felt entirely comfortable, even if there haven't been incidences of, explicit discrimination. We would like to make sure that we're protected from that in the future because it is a real thing that happens."
Mhm. And so now I feel like we're seeing this sort of like two-headed monster where on one hand there's the backlash, that Republicans really effectively lumped their sort of exaggerated accounts of what is happening with trans people to sort of turn people against all queer people. And there's that. And then there's also this thing where Donald Trump has like normalized saying hateful things. And so, with these two things happening at once, we're seeing people being convinced that they shouldn't actually support LGBTQ plus people, and these voices telling them it's okay to say that. It's okay to be homophobic. It's okay to diminish trans people's experiences. It is okay to completely blow off gay people's marriages. Actually, it fits so neatly with like the fitness world and the multi-level marketing world and all of those things that have like kind of turned into far-right pipelines. Like you can imagine some like life coach or whatever being like, don't let them tell you that you're being me. You're standing up for your beliefs, right?
Yeah, like on Fox News, resident quote comedian Greg Gutfield declared Tuesday that conservatives need to learn from the blacks and remove the power from the N-word by referring to themselves as Nazis, prompting critics to call the host beneath contempt for his normalization of Nazism. Why, yes. They were talking about how Democrats have been saying that, rounding up immigrants and putting them in concentration camps is like Nazi behavior because
It is.
it is. Yeah, allow me to quote him. "This is why the criticism doesn't matter to us when you call us Nazis. Nazi this and Nazi that. I'm beginning to think they don't like us. You know what? I've said this before. We need to learn from the blacks. The way they were able to remove the power from the N-word by using it. So from now on, it's what up, my Nazi? Hey, what up, my Nazi? Hey, what's hanging, my Nazi?" So, yeah,
I'm
like,
sorry. I'm so embarrassed for these people.
that now it's not only okay to speak in a hateful manner, it's cool. You're expressing how you're like smarter and better than everyone else.
And holier, right? I think there's this, well, when people talk about like a Jesus complex, this martyr complex,
Mhm.
there's this whole people are going to be so hateful to us for speaking the truth and living our faith, but we're going to do it because we're making this sacrifice for our religion or
Mhm.
whatever, right? And it is really a crafty way of treating people badly into like a badge of honor.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's just very bizarre. Like that book, we have a young niece who another relative gave her this book that was, do you remember what that was called, Sienna? It was basically like Christian comebacks for people who will.
It was basically like, here's a Bible verse and explanation for every problem you might ever run into in your life. Like, there was one about, your classic, how to handle relationships. Remember that whatever the Bible verse is about woman being subordinate to her husband.
Yeah. I mean, we're seeing references to it in the news. We have seen it personally in our own church experiences and watching family members that there is sort of this resurgence of like fundamentalism, sort of return to this version of religion that is like taking things very literally and black and white, and the rules are the rules. And I don't know if it's a reaction to that sort of more social justice oriented, say, Catholicism in the 70s and 80s. I don't know if it's like,
I think it's fairly established that it is, from my understanding of religious studies.
so yeah, when I was in college, I actually started out living at the Newman Center, which is what the Catholic student centers are called at universities. And I had a really good experience there. I made friends that I still have. And just overall, my experience confirmed a lot of the things that I had learned throughout like my Catholic schooling, which was sort of an emphasis on taking care of other people. So when Sienna started college at the same university, I was like, you should check this out as a place to go to church because I had such a good experience there. And we went, and it was the like welcome back students mass. And it was just dark and sad. And I think they did do that reading about wives submitting to their husbands. And there were women in like veils, which, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, churches in Europe still require head coverings, but it just all together represented this sort of like return to a much harsher and I guess I would say archaic interpretation. And like I have read that's happening on college campuses, that young people are like sort of doubling down on that, which is really mysterious to me. There was just something I saw recently in the New York Times about this MAGA summit for young women in Dallas. Actually, I think there was overlap with the wellness industry and some of this too, like less burnout, more babies. Like, don't try to have that high-powered career that people tried to tell you should have. Get married and have babies and
Have 10 children and you will definitely not be burned out or stressed in any way.
you'll be so relaxed. But again, like, I don't know, it's almost like conservatism and traditional, the whole trad wife thing. It's like a fad. It's very hard throughout all of this stuff that we've been talking about to not see it as sort of a complex web of strategizing by Republicans. And I don't know if that is them begrudgingly giving progressives credit for the movements of the 60s and 70s and being like, wow, if you like wrap this whole thing up with lifestyle and music and fashion. For example, I just read that floral dresses, especially with cowboy boots, which we saw so much of in the stores yesterday, are like the conservative young woman uniform.
It is. My fiance is like, yeah, I see these pretty flowery dresses. And I'm like, oh, those are so nice. And I'm like, wait, if people look at me, are they going to be like, wow, you're gay? Or are they going to be like, wow, you're a Republican?
Yeah, it is a fashion thing. And so I think like maybe they were like, wow, like people loved hippie fashion, whatever. Maybe they're trying to like package their own lifestyle, right?
Yeah, it definitely does seem like it's almost like it's a move away from explicitly like family values in the way that you might have seen in like the 2000s or 2010s, and more like it's a holistic lifestyle approach, right? The way you dress and the way you eat and the way you have kids and the way you work out and where you go to school and all those things.
And you're morally pure and you eat clean. It's fascinating, but it seems to be effective. It seems to be effective for young people, especially I think because, high school and college age people are sort of wired. Like, I think it's just some kind of evolutionary, like leaving the nest thing where we're kind of wired to like strike out and do a thing that's different, right? Something that feels transgressive sometimes.
Well, and it doesn't even have to be transgressive necessarily. There's an element of it that's just like you're trying to establish your identity, and so you're like you're a nerd or you're a goth or whatever. You're a trad wife, I guess. It's a paradigm, right? It's a sort of set of things that gives you like an answer or directions to an answer for all of your questions. Like, what should I eat? Who should I hang out with? Like all of these difficult questions that young people are struggling to wrestle with and are feeling overwhelmed by. It's like a way of answering them.
While they're shutting down public radio and television and higher education, they're trying to keep people from asking questions and thinking.
Yeah. I mean, not to sound like a Luddite or anything, but think about like AI and how much support there is for AI and AI companies amongst Republicans.
Oh, really? I didn't even know that.
I
mean, obviously somebody is supporting it. That's not us.
A big thing is just like the financial.
Yeah. There's a lot of money in it.
There's a lot of money in it. And so they want to like be striking deals. They want to be making more advances in it in the US than they are in, say, China. That it's sort of because it seems like the next big thing. And because there's been such a big swing in the tech sector, I think, towards Republicans, that, yeah, there's like so much interest in it. And AI, it's like, AI, summarize this book for me so I don't have to read it. AI, do a Google search for me so I don't have to read through all the results on my own. AI, tell me if this thing is AI generated so I don't have to think about it.
The less people think, the more you can control them. And then going to my personal opinions on a lot of the Republicans who are in charge now, the more corrupt and destructive your plans are, the less engaged you want people to be.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want them to be critical thinkers. You don't want them to hear other points of view. You want to feed them a wear this, think this, read this, do this, eat this formula, right?
Right. That's why all of the people who really, or not all, but a significant portion of the voters who really swung towards Trump and Republicans in the last year were like young, politically disengaged people.
You guys, we are in the opening scene of a dystopian horror movie.
Well, it's literally 1984, right? I think there's explicitly a line in 1984 about how the party has summarizes all the books for you so you don't have to read them, so you don't have to put any effort in, because everything goes better for the party when no one's putting effort into thinking.
And here we are with all the insights and none of the power. How do we save the world? If you have the answers, please let us know.
Yeah, I got nothing.
In the meantime, all we can really do is talk about it and I guess just encourage people to I doubt anybody that's listening to this is not aware of what's happening around them. But the takeaway, I suppose, is don't buy into this narrative that by supporting trans people, you are hurting the Democrats and progressives and liberals, and you are handing everything over to the Republicans because that is part of a strategy, an agenda. That talking point to me is to turn us against each other. But it was not Democrats supporting trans rights that made Donald Trump win. It was some very, very, again, begrudgingly savvy strategizing that's been going on for a while now. And please, please don't ever say, "What up, Nazi?" That's so horrible. I mean, anybody that says the blacks.
Yeah, like you said, it's just so embarrassing.
Yeah. The stupefying of America is really what all of this is. So keep reading, stay smart. When we return in 2 weeks, Sienna will be married. We have a wedding coming up this week we're really excited about. So we hope you have a good couple of weeks. We intend to have a happy and celebratory couple of weeks, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye.
If you found this episode interesting, informative, amusing, please review and follow us on your podcasting platform of choice. Getting those reviews and follows really helps us show up more in the algorithm and be able to reach more people to help them. You can find us on social media, Instagram and Threads at queerkid.straightmom, Blue Sky at qksm.bsky.social, and Facebook at queerkidstraightmom. We are no longer on Twitter.